Hello, everyone. It's Benita Fitzgerald-Mosley. Welcome back. And I'm the head of community impact and the president of Fun Play at League Apps, as you heard a little bit earlier if you were with us at our opening session. It's been an incredible afternoon, and these discussions have been intriguing and engaging. We're so happy that you all have joined us. From the conversation with MLS about MLS Next and about stepping up the game, instilling values to the sport of soccer, and really thinking bigger about making soccer more accessible. And then we heard from an incredible panel about leadership, and those leaders shared their superpowers in helping lead their organizations, everything from kindness and optimism and embracing a no blame culture in their organizations. And finally, most recently, we heard from some experts in HR, on HR and operations and how they've been able to survive and thrive through the pandemic this last year. So coming up next, we've got two back-to-back opportunities to hear some great content. First, it's growing your club culture, marketing and member engagement. So it's moderated by Kay Bradley, and Kay is the director of brand and fan engagement at the U.S. Soccer Federation. So welcome to the stage, Kay. Come on up. There you go.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Benita. I'm really excited to be here today to talk about a topic that's a big focus of mine at the Federation, and I know that it's something that many of you are waking up thinking about every day, which is really how do we engage and connect and grow our audiences, whether that be players, fans, communities, coaches. How do we connect in more authentic ways and grow and engage more deeply? And, especially when we think about this year and reflect on all of the challenges that we faced with COVID, I think we can also think about some ways that COVID has inspired us or forced us in some ways to think different about how we engage with our constituents, and a lot of lessons that I think that we can pull forward and can help us think about how do we operate differently in the future, and things that we can take forward with us to set ourselves up for success even more as we go forward. So here with me to dig into this topic even further are Katie, Jonathan, and Jimmy. If you guys want to head up to the stage, we'll start with Katie. Katie Brooks joins us from Alexandria Soccer Club in Northern Virginia. She is the Public Relations and Communications Director who oversees all marketing and strategic communications for the organization. Her responsibilities include content and developing partnerships with thought leaders and community organizations, and helps to drive club registrations through digital. She currently holds her USSF D license. In addition to all the work she's doing on the content and marketing side, she also coaches a number of programs across the club. Thank you, Katie, so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Jimmy McAlister, who is the Director of Soccer for Seattle United. Jimmy is an early product of the Seattle youth soccer system and also enjoyed 10 years of playing professional soccer, 8 seasons with the NASL, and 7 with Major Indoor Soccer League. During his career, he also played for the U.S. men's national team, where he earned 6 caps over 3 years. He has an extensive coaching career ranging from the Decatur High School boys team to the Hibernian USSDA team, which he coached to an Adult Soccer Association National Championship title. Welcome, Jimmy. And last but not least, we are joined by Jonathon Colton. Jonathon is the director of the Bethesda Soccer Club. He helped transform the Bethesda boys program into one of the leading player development programs in the country, with 13 players drafted to MLS and over 500 players placed in college programs across the country. Bethesda was one of the most successful clubs in the Development Academy, reaching a national championship final, Elite 8, and the playoffs 10 times. And Jonathon was also a 4-year starter for Virginia Tech and American University. Welcome, Jonathon, and thank you all so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's get started. Jonathon, I'd love to start with you to kick things off. On the topic of marketing, could you take us through how you manage and deploy the marketing engine at Bethesda Soccer to help achieve the goals for your organization?
Yeah, thank you, and for that great introduction, and inviting me on here. So let me walk back a little bit. So COVID has been very challenging for us, as it is for many clubs. One of the unique things actually we did, before I dive into the marketing platform and how we engage with our external community and also our internal community, but what we did was actually start holding monthly Zoom meetings that were open to all of our parents. And what this did is actually helped create sort of some calm and good energy. They could ask anything. I would have a short agenda that I would sort of outline for the club, and then they could ask whatever they wanted, ranging from, our policies on playing time to what the budget looks like, really, and how we hire our coaches. So that was an interesting thing we did to start really engaging with the parents during the COVID time. It first starts, so our marketing plan starts with our year-long calendar. What we do in the beginning of the year, we set out a calendar, right? And these are events that are open to, our external community and internal community, like our tournaments, the leagues we run, up to our really anything we're doing. And so the way we segregate that is, and through two databases, right? We've created an external database of 10,000, approximately 10,000 hits, as well as an internal database, which is just our parents, and that's about 3,000 to 3,500 on any given year, depending on which families are opting into it. On Tuesday every Tuesday we send on external marketing communications, and that's for anybody to register. And that could be like our Premier Cup, which is our big tournament that we host every year. It could be like a futsal league. It could be our Super Y tryouts, our regular tryouts, really anything that's open to the external community. And how we've developed these databases over the years is essentially anybody that's signed up for something, we keep them in it until they opt out, really. It's about 10,000 right now. On Fridays, we do everything internal. So we have a newsletter that goes out every Friday, and what that does is it could update us, update the parents on upcoming events. It could, like if we wanted to talk about like some policies we're implementing or parent reminders, which has been huge during this epidemic. And we would put those in there to our parents. It could be some of the values we're trying to drip out, like, what do we stand for as a club? It could be some reminders about how we hydrate or how we eat and certain things like that. So that goes out Friday, and that's only to our own parents. At which point, both of those two things, well, the Tuesday communications linked to our external social media platform. So anytime the Tuesday one goes out, it actually hits our social media stuff as well. And that's the I guess the cliff notes of how we run the organization from a marketing standpoint. I will tell you, we, like most clubs, we kind of had to reinvent ourselves in some certain areas. We ran an indoor futsal league for 5 years now that is pretty successful. But with our county being the most conservative county in the, arguably the country, I think there was one other county outside of Boston that was shut down. Like we couldn't do anything indoor, right? And we still have to wear our masks outdoor, even when we're playing, which is another topic. We pivoted. We started marketing an outdoor futsal league, which we thought would be somewhat popular, but it caught wind. In literally less than a month, we had something like 1,500 kids sign up for an outdoor futsal league. So it's a way that we've leveraged our external database and programming that way. But that's just one example of how we use this if we want to get a new program off the ground. So
That's great. Jonathon, thank you so much for that overview. That's really helpful to get a picture and a sense of what you guys are doing in the organization. How you guys are pivoting a little bit in terms of how to respond to the current environment, but also how you're planning for the year and preparing in advance. I think it's really important that we acknowledge this unique time, but we also think, thinking about, normal circumstances, many organizations are operating with limited resources, whether that's, tight budgets or small staff. So Katie, I'd love to turn to you to talk about, how does your organization achieve its goals and do all the things the great things that Jonathon talked about, under the circumstances and with limited resources at times.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. And thanks for everyone who's here this afternoon hanging with us. So I think the first thing you want to do is sort of figure out your goals and priorities. What you want to achieve might be different than another club. And just because you see another club promoting something or featuring something doesn't mean that's what you should do. And it's really easy, I think, especially we live in an area, Jonathon and I, where there's a lot of soccer clubs, and it's easy to get caught up in like what everyone else is doing. So first think about, where can you spend your time to best utilize your talents, your budget, your staff, and then kind of tackle things, down your priority list. When I'm thinking about this, there's a few tangible items that I think can be really helpful. The first is utilizing free tools. The thing is, you can get really bogged down in all the free tools. An example would be Google Analytics, right? It shares your analytics from your website, but there are people at large companies whose entire role is to, let's say, analyze the Google Analytics platform and utilize that for marketing. So you set it up and maybe you look at your top 10 most frequented pages per quarter. You don't need a baseline, you don't need to look at anything else, but where are people visiting your site, and can you then use that information to make those the 10 best pages on your website? Another thing I've done is talk to like my program directors and administrators to see if there are questions that they get asked over and over, and maybe we can answer those in an FAQ on the site. So sort of, I'm thinking about how much time do I have and how can I utilize this free item in a way that can benefit my club the most. Tex, you can go ahead and share that PDF, by the way. I put together a one-pager with some free resources that you can use to great extent or a little extent that some people might find helpful. Another tangible thing we've really been focused on and that I think is important to remember is your grassroots marketing. There are still people who are not online, and how can you reach them at any time? And also, how can you reach them during COVID when you maybe don't have access to kids via school or via sending flyers home in backpacks? Can you hold free clinics, even in a COVID safe environment? I actually heard a really neat idea last Friday on a different panel I was listening to, where a club had partnered with Meals on Wheels and were sending home flyers with the meals to senior citizens about programs for their grandchildren to participate in. And on the flip side, in their club newsletter, they were promoting Meals on Wheels and sharing the resources. And so just thinking creatively about community partnerships that are reaching neighborhoods and sub-communities and schools in your neighborhood that you might not be able to reach online is super important. And definitely something to not forget about at any time, but especially during COVID when, we've all heard about how difficult it is to access some kids and how without school, we're losing track of them. Last thing I'll throw in here, which is kind of cool and something I didn't consider at first until I had it, is find yourself a marketing or communications like brainstorm buddy or mentor, which seems simple, but I think a lot of us, especially in the youth sports world and at youth soccer clubs, are maybe the only person at our club doing this role. which is great. And it, gives you a lot of good skills and resources, but there's not somebody who maybe speaks your language, if you will, or, someone to bounce ideas off of. So for me, at first, it was one of our board members who happened to be a marketing professional, and we met once a month. And I wasn't necessarily reporting things, but I was like, talking about pain points and sharing things about the website. And it was so helpful. I've also met with different communications directors at other soccer clubs to just sort of like brainstorm things we're doing and ask, does this happen to you? What do you guys do about this? And so that's been a really interesting resource and something that in a siloed position, you might not realize the benefit of until you explore it. So those are kind of, I think, 3 tangible things and to keep in mind as you're thinking about yourself as maybe the single person or, a small club trying to grow. Prioritize and get creative.
I love that, Katie. I think it's so important for us to lean on each other and to glean insights from organizations that are facing similar challenges. I also think that that notion of prioritization is critical, right? Thinking about what are we trying to accomplish and then going to get the tools that will help us achieve that rather than just trying to do everything all at once or kind of tackle the world without thinking about where we're trying, what our end goal is and where we're trying to go. So that's very helpful. Jonathon, you said something earlier about, our values dripping out of our communications. And I'd love to kind of talk a little bit about, Jimmy, as it relates to Seattle United. Seattle United has a really distinct and unique brand. Can you talk us through and help us think about, how are you using marketing and how are you using content to convey or to have your values drip out into the world to drive that greater engagement among your constituents?
Yeah, at Seattle United, we're a 2,200 player club, and I have the luxury of having a marketing director and being able to do that. But this year was a real business model challenge in terms of the COVID. And Jonathon said something interesting that you have to be able to pivot. We created a maintenance program for our families that we started off in Seattle. Of course, we didn't play for 8 months. We went 5 months with just Zoom. So we felt that we had to do something with our cost of operation to allow people to continue to be in the program during the Zoom phase. And then we went to the on the field phase, groups of 5, no contact. We charged 85% of our dues during that period to help people out. Like Jonathon and like Katie, we've been hit pretty hard with the regulations here in Seattle. Some of our fields were taken over by people that we didn't really want to be around. But anyway, the one constant you have to have, even during a pandemic, is your values. And I think Jonathon alluded to it. I think Seattle United's a community asset. I know through this COVID period that soccer clubs and soccer associations are much more organized than some of the other sports. A lot of the situations here in Seattle, people were leaning on our club and our medical advisory committee to help people get along and how to move through a pandemic. In a normal year, we do soccer in schools, and I think that is our best marketing. We have a deal with Seattle Public Schools, a partnership, and we're in 30 public schools in Seattle. We actually run the PE classes for the teachers. And obviously the PE sessions are based on soccer and based on trying to get kids in the game. Besides doing that, we give out over $100,000 a year in financial aid. We don't give scholarships, we give financial aid, and they're always based on need. And I think those things with the school programs and everything else, you become a community asset. With the food drives, the clothing drives and all that, you become an asset. We've gotten together with some of our vendors, including soccer.com, to be able to give high school teams that can't afford uniforms to play the games in. I think it's important to be aligned with the community. We created a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee that talks about problems in our community, talks about Women's History Month, all these things that we need to work on. Obviously, we work on Facebook and all those things to contact kids. But for me, I come from the old NESL, where all the players in the NESL went to 1,000 schools doing clinics. And I think that's the way to go, direct marketing to the families. We do community centers. We bought a a big blow up indoor soccer arena. We bring the community centers and let kids play for free during the summertime. I think all of that is not only marketing our club, but it's marketing the game in a greater sense. And so I think we've been very fortunate to have a gentleman named Carlos Enriquez, who's our community outreach person, and he has a wonderful relationship with Seattle Public Schools. Some of our schools have great equality, equity. I mean, some of the schools we work with, the kids can't afford a lot. The other thing we've done is not only done financial aid where it's soft dollars, we've done subsidies where the kids can travel and so on and so forth. And we're very lucky in Seattle to be able to have people that donate to the club and our gala and our raffles and everything else to make that possible. So all kids can play, not just the kids that can afford it.
That's great. Yeah, Jimmy, it seems like you guys and everyone is thinking really creatively about how to tackle the challenges that we faced this past year. I think as we think about that, I'd love to go around the panel and just ask, if there's one lesson that you've learned that you think, you'll take into the future as we, come into a post-COVID world that you think will help your organization and will help our organizations to grow. What would be the one lesson that you would hold up as something that should be brought forward into the future? And Jonathon, why don't you're to the left of me on the screen? Why don't we start with you and then we'll just go around?
Just be open to everything really, and being being open to, as Jimmy said, to pivot and to be fluid and to move in a different directions if something is not working. We did another thing as we entered into the pandemic. We really valued our members, right? And I think everybody's a little worried about where we were going, with COVID coming in. And so last May and June when we had our tryout, we actually to develop some goodwill and also create something, I guess, some solidarity with the club. We actually guaranteed every player like a spot in the club, right? So we didn't move any players around. We gave everybody a position in our club, and we called it basically the loyalty program, right? And so I think when you go through hard times like this and you're not really sure like if everybody's going to come back and where, financially where your club's going to be, at the end of the day, your members are so important to you. And a lot of times we're striving to win the national championship or do this and that. And really, these are families and the relationships that we build here. You tend to lean on and it helps with that environment. And I'll say what that led to. I think parents started to feel that, in this time of COVID, there was a lot of uncertainty with the schools and the Zooms and kids had soccer. And I know Jimmy and Katie probably feel this, you got a lot of this, but it was like the one thing a kid could go to and it was their outlet and their community because they weren't going to school. Right. And so we pivoted again and thought how we could lean on this and some of the kids, families were hit a lot harder than others. And we created basically a fundraiser for our scholarship fund that we raised triple the amount that we've ever raised before just by doing a virtual fundraiser. And I think people felt, and very, they were very happy that we were loyal to them. We figured out how to provide something for their kids during this tough time, and we all came together as a club. And we raised a ton of money for some of that soft money, but also for we do the same thing, Jimmy, financial aid. But we're set for 3 years in terms of what we need now, just from this one fundraiser through this pandemic. So there's a lot of good that came out of this year. So.
Wow, that's great. Jimmy, over to you.
Well, I think probably I'm the oldest panelist in the history of the world here. I'm 64 years old, and never in 64 years did I think we would be in a position like we're in this year, just how really fragile we all are. And I think that I've found that how important the soccer coaches and the people that run the club are, because our kids didn't have anything else but maybe a groups of 5 no contact training session. And the kids were so excited to get out there. We've actually grown during this pandemic. And one of the things I would say is that these kids were put into a situation where they're away from their friends, pretty much isolated with their parents, and how important we really are. And the other thing I've found is going around and looking at the different sports and the different leagues, how well organized we really are. And some of these clubs are well-run businesses that are very impressive. And I left soccer for 20 years and ran various businesses. And I'm very impressed with how everybody did. And like Jonathon said, the pivoting and the creativity and how important the coaches were to the kids and how the kids depend on the coaches to have somebody to talk to when things are not going well. Like Jonathon said, national championships are fantastic and we all want to win them. But in the end of the day, it's about building a legacy and building clubs that are community assets and good businesses in your community. And I think that a lot of people in the soccer world have done that fantastically.
And then Katie, last but not least.
Yeah, for sure. 2 great answers first. And I actually just want to build off of both of what you said, specifically to being really strong communities in really strong communities, as well as I've also been impressed and found that soccer organizations are pretty well run and organized. And we've seen that over the past year. Something we realized and did throughout COVID was pivot creatively, like we keep talking about, to launch a non-soccer related summer camp, as well as an outdoor virtual school, which was a crazy endeavor. Tents outdoors, 1 single kid per tent. We had Wi-Fi through this that the school helped us provide. We had free meals. Kids would come and do their virtual school outdoors. But one of the things that made this possible, and that I think is the important key here, is that we were able to utilize our coaches. So one big thing we'll take away from all of the last year is really valuing and thinking how we can both support and utilize our coaches and staff. Because like a lot of coaches that probably coach at many of your clubs, there's different scenarios where they do it as a part-time job or they supplement with a number of teams. And we were fortunate enough to be able to keep paying our coaches throughout, but maybe they lost their full-time job or maybe they were working less. And so being able to supplement with like this daytime schooling activity or this daytime camp. I mean, you're a childcare provider to some extent as a soccer coach anyway. So let's use our resources and your skills in a different way. And just to kind of tie that to the marketing piece, we did some cool things with our coaches interacting with our kids via social channels, like not even per se to like promote anything, but like a day in the life with so-and-so. And it was really cool as the kids were lacking that, contact with friends and their adult role models to see how they would interact and like really relish in seeing what their coach does during the day and what they eat. So little things like that to bring the whole community, being creative, working hard with your resources together.
That's great. And I love those ideas and concepts of, pivoting, thinking creatively, and utilizing your resources in new and different ways to think about, how we can set ourselves up for better for the future and how we can help rebuild these communities and rebuild our own communities. So all really insightful lessons that we can take forward with us. I think at this point, we'd love to open it up to questions from the audience and hear from all of you. What are you dying to know from all of our panelists? So feel free to add questions into the Q&A chat. And then I think you can also upvote questions to have them rise to the top. Let's get this going. All right, so our first question is regarding email. So how do you know how much email is too much versus what is not enough in trying to communicate with your communities and your audiences and drive that engagement? So I see Katie nodding. So it looks like she has something percolating. Why don't we jump to you first, and others feel free to jump in and build.
Yeah, I think strangely, you like have to get to know your audience, because there are, of course, industry standards, but like soccer nonprofit industry standards are not something that are highly studied. So something I keep an eye on is, of course, unsubscribe. I'll also sometimes reach out to people and ask, like, sometimes you can, depending on your software, you can set a survey at the end. How come you unsubscribed? Something else I found helpful is if I'm gearing up for something big, we're gearing up for a big fundraiser in April, I know I'm going to email people a lot, and I tell them. So like our listserv, I'm like, hey, we're so excited for this one-day fundraiser. I'm going to email you 7 times in the next 5 weeks. Please stick with me. You don't want to miss out on news throughout the rest of the year. Just want you to know that like I'm going to be in touch. And that I found is pretty helpful. And then I'll be like, this is my 2nd of 7th email. Like, hope you're all doing great. Looking forward to this event. Here we go. Because I think the one thing that people that get annoyed don't realize is how many emails people miss. So I sometimes tell them, like, you'd be surprised that somebody reads my 7th email as the first. And so hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, that's great. It is a tough balance, right? Because you want to ensure the message is heard, but you don't want to inundate people. So it is, I think that idea of understanding your audience and what their expectations are is really critical. All right, Jimmy, we have one for you. Can you tell us more about the school programs that are happening in your community? It sounds like a great venture, and many of us struggle to get past the school's PTA or principal. So would love to hear some insight into how others can get a program like that started in their markets.
We went direct to Seattle Public Schools, and there's one person that's involved in who comes into the schools and different activities. We have a gentleman named Carlos Enriquez that went right to Seattle Public Schools, and we set it up. We have 2 programs. We have the in-school PE program that he went there, and our coaches go in, Carlos mainly, and does physical PE classes with the kids. And we have after school kind of daycare in the evening programs that we've done in 3 or 4 schools that, 75 to 80 kids after school at any given time. I think the biggest thing is we rent a lot of fields from Seattle Public Schools, so we already have a relationship there. But if you want to write to me, I will get you in touch with Carlos Enrique, and I can give you the curriculum we use, and it's up to date. It's with Seattle Public Schools. We sat down and did a curriculum with them so it matched what they were trying to teach the kids. And we help with the equipment, balls, and all, pug goals and all that type of thing. And we just went to the schools and we took some of the pressure off the PE teachers. They loved it when we came in and said, we'll do your half-hour PE class for you. So all vetted, all RMA'd in the whole bit, but it was done in a nice way. And like I said, we're in 30 schools, and we start with the more diverse schools and then work our way down. And in Seattle, there's some schools that have need. 55% of some of the schools in Seattle are on free and reduced lunch. So it's important that we get in there. And it's not only, we don't get a lot of players in the premier level, but it does help our association in the recreational level. These kids want to play and be a part of something. So it's worked really well for us. But if you can get a hold of me at a coaching director at SeattleUnited.com, I can certainly set you up and tell you how we did it, and even give you the person in Seattle to talk to how we sorted it out with the schools.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Jimmy. And unfortunately, we are at the end of our time today. So Jonathon, Katie, Jimmy, thank you all so much for your insightful perspective. We're really, all of those lessons learned are things that I think we can all utilize moving forward. So thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for sharing. And thank you, all of you out there, for your great questions, and enjoy the rest of the summit.
All right. Thank you, Kay. Also to Kate, Jimmy, and Jonathon. It was such an informative session and conversation, and I hope everyone took away a few helpful tips for engaging with your members. And so up next, we have a final video spotlight with Julie Ehrman. She's the president and co-founder of Angel City FC, the NWSL team in Los Angeles. And that team will be playing their first season in spring of 2022. And they have a really incredible mission and story I'm sure you'll be eager to hear. So here, pay attention. We've got Julie's video, Julie Ehrman. All right. Thanks, Julie. That was terrific. She's amazing. And Angel City FC is surely going to be one of the next great NWSL clubs. Don't touch your dial. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. So talk to some folks at your table, get to know a few other attendees, and we'll be back up with the next panel, our final panel, very, very shortly. Thank you. See you in a few moments.